Hello there. I hope you're having a great day today. Now, I have something really special, something you'll definitely want to see that involves today's subject to those of you that stick around until the very end of this video. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. I'm going to tell you guys why kids back in the early 80s, as strange as it may sound to some of you, couldn't get away from this fast enough. And I was one of those kids. There is a huge wave of support for old school gaming these days, especially with Wizards of the Coast's continued missteps. A lot of folks seem to have a desire to go back to a time of greater simplicity in their role playing. One of the products that continues to get a lot of attention is Old School Essentials from Necrotic Gnome. Old School Essentials, or OSE for short, is a throwback to the old Moldvay edited D&D rules, like the ones I just showed you, the red and blue box set. Now, the basic and expert sets are the sets that I came into the hobby on when they were released in the very early 1980s. I remember getting the D&D basic set when I was around 11 years old, and I just remember being totally blown away by it. It was so evocative, so new of a concept at the time, that it's really hard to describe nowadays. I remember doing Keep on the Borderlands, and it really blew me away just how fun this game could be. Now, what I'm going to say right now is only my experience. Maybe yours is different, and it probably is. But as great as these rules are in retrospect, you have to consider its target market, especially back then. D&D has sort of followed comics in that they are both hobbies that started out with kids and teenagers as its primary market. And boy, have times changed. If you had told us back then that there would be, 40 and 50-year-old adults playing the game that we loved, it would have seemed a bit odd and out of place, for sure. Yes, I know that is precisely who made the game, but you also have to realize that we didn't really know that back then, or at least we didn't think about it. It was pre-internet days, and Gary Gygax was this sort of shadowy figure. So while I'm sure there were older players back then, from our point of view, it was a game for us. Ages 10 and up, as it said on the box. But here also lay the seeds of why, after a time, we couldn't wait to put the red box and the blue box on the shelf. For you see, when you're dealing with kids and young teens, there's always a desire to be, taken more seriously, frankly, to be more adult. Well, as fun as some of the earlier basic and expert adventures were, like Borderlands and Isle of Dread, there wasn't really much beyond them. And there was also something out there that immediately appealed to a lot of us players. And that was this: Advanced D&D. When I ran into a new group of friends that included Gavin Morgan, who some of you met on a live stream a few weeks ago, they told me that the basic and expert sets were fine, but there actually was a better game that was a little bit more adult-oriented: Advanced D&D. I remember being distinctly fascinated on one hand, but also a little disappointed on the other when I was told that the basic and expert boxed editions just couldn't be used with Advanced D&D. They were essentially different games. But honestly, once I overcame those emotions, I couldn't wait to throw the box sets in the back of my closet and beg my mom for the money to get the first edition Advanced D&D Player's Handbook. And that's exactly what happened. Once I put the basic and expert rules away, I never really thought much about them again. Maybe trapped in a mindset like so many others that newer was just better. There's also one more reason I think kids back in the 80s couldn't wait to ditch the red and blue boxes for Advanced D&D, and that goes back to the way we played. Now, I didn't play in a regular living campaign. We were sporadic at best. But 12-year-old kids, they weren't really reliable enough back then to keep long-standing campaigns going. In fact, it seemed like most of the folks who played D&D in our area were the same way. They just didn't have these long-running worlds. I'm sure there were people playing the game that obviously were able to create fully formed campaigns with deep NPCs and complex plots, but just not in our neck of the woods. When I played and occasionally ran games back then, there was a heavy emphasis on pre-written Advanced D&D adventures. Specifically, I remember the really big one seemed to be the Giants series, which led to the reveal of who was behind the mayhem in those adventures, the Drow. Of course, this was a real shock back then, and that led ultimately to Lolth and Queen of the Demon Web pits. Going into the Abyss was one of the coolest things you could imagine doing as a teenage boy back in the 1980s. It seemed like that's how we would play the game most of the time. You'd create characters to go through certain adventures or a certain adventure series, perhaps. And then a lot of times it seemed like that was it. When you started another one, probably with a completely different DM, you just rolled up a new character. Boy, what a choice of adventures you had back then. Tomb of Horrors, kind of more of a hot sauce challenge than an actual adventure, but so much fun nonetheless. Ghost Tower of Inverness, and Hidden Shrine of Tomoa-chan, or is it Tomoa-con? I never could figure that out. This is one of my favorites, and there were so many more too. Later on, there was the first couple of Dragonlance modules that I thought were also really cool, even if the Kender did seem kind of stupid even back then. The basic and expert games simply did not have that kind of support. They were the games for little kids. That is until many, many years later when folks started to appreciate their beautiful simplicity. Now, I promised you something at the end here. I absolutely love the art on the cover of the original red box set by Errol Otis. I think it is the definitive work of D&D art. It's not too realistic, it's evocative, it's so colorful, instantly recognizable. And I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty good day job and a very understanding wife who also games with me. That allows me to occasionally do things like this in our game room. See, I really wanted this piece of art somewhere in our house, but a framed print just didn't seem to do it justice. Oh, I guess only a 10-foot mural would. This is actually one of those vinyl adhesive wall clings, and it was very easy to install, by the way. I didn't tell my wife what piece of art I was getting. She was a little bit nervous, maybe worried I'd get something a little too titillating. I assured her that it would be classic and classy, and she was as blown away when she saw it on the wall as I was. So this is now in our game room / YouTube studio. So you may occasionally see this in some future videos. I absolutely love this, and I'm glad I can look at it for inspiration whenever I run my games. That's all for now. If you were a young teenager in the early 80s and have a different experience than mine, I'd really love to hear about it in the comments below. Maybe you were one of those kids who was able to keep together, a detailed campaign. But that just was not the case for us. We would just do these adventures, bang them out, have fun, fire and forget, as they say. Now, if you like this video, if you could, why not put a thumbs up on it? That would really help me out. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel and you like this kind of content, go ahead and join the army. I appreciate each and every one of you. All right, you guys take care. You have a great, great rest of your day, and we will talk very soon. Goodbye.
What qualifies you to be a U.S. Senator? You have 60 seconds.
Hi, good night, everybody.